grades, my admission, my job, my salary, my house, my car, my wife, my kids. It's all about me. Very rarely are we looking outside and saying, what about us? What about the city or the country? Classic example in India. Have you, Bombay, I'm just coming from Bombay, and I hate that city for one reason. When you look at the buildings outside, some of these old Ville Parle and Juhu, you look at those buildings, terrible. Have you seen how they maintain those apartment blocks? You go inside the apartment block, oh my God, it looks like, wow. We are, as a country, that's what we are. Inside our space is brilliant, outside to hell with it. Stink, muck, dirt. We're always selfish. We need to teach our children to think big. Don't teach your children to just survive for themselves or create a profession or a career for themselves. Teach them to make a difference to the world. If they fail in that, they would have still gotten a great profession for themselves. Aim for the sky or at least reach the clouds. Don't just focus on telling your child, get your 96% and get into that IIT or that NIT. Those are small things. What you need to teach them is how they're going to, why was I born? What is the purpose? Remember coming back to that, closing this, start off with making them think and introspect and yet dream big. And I think that's the combination that our children need today. Does that make sense? And I'm going to be closing with, talking to you about 7 skills that I've written, which I think teachers today need. Before I start that, I need to give you something which I learned and I thought it was so profound. I come from a country, you and I live in this country, which had the Gurukul system for thousands of years. And somewhere down the line, we just decided to look outside and felt that that was better, and we adopted an educational system which we're still living with, and we're very proud of it, right? But I think it's so redundant. It's so not relevant to the world that we live in. Because what was taught in the Gurukul systems in hundreds of thousands of years ago as well, recorded history of 5,000-6,000 years, is so relevant to the world that we live in. And what I'm talking to you about is what's relevant to teachers. In the ancient Gurukul system, there were 6 levels of teachers. The first level of teacher was called the Adhyapak. Adhyapak was someone who gave information to children, right? So Adhyapak would say that this is a chair, that is an apple. Information, right? That was a basic level in any Gurukul system. You had an Adhyapak. You had a next level, you evolved from an Adhyapak to be an Upadhyay. Upadhyay is someone who gave knowledge about the information. Not just information, they gave knowledge about it. For example, there are different kinds of chairs. There's a red chair, there is a wooden chair, there is a, people sit here for longer hours over there. You've got a red apple, you've got a green apple, you've got a raw apple, a ripe apple. With the apple, you can make juice, you can eat it raw, you can peel off the skin. You're giving knowledge about the information. So then, the moment you elevate yourself from just giving information to start giving knowledge, you start elevating yourself from being an Adhyapak to an Upadhyay. You had the next level of teachers. They were called as the Acharyas. The Acharya was someone who taught the skill, the physicality of things. Dronacharya, right? So you had an Acharya who was teaching skill. So when you're teaching a child how to write, when you teach a child how to cut an apple, when you teach a child how to paint, you're teaching them skills. There's a physicality of teaching things which are required. The way you eat, to the way you sit, to the way you walk, everything requires a certain skill. So there's a lot of physicality. Skills were being taught. How to make a chair, how to get the right wood for the chair, right? So similarly, when you elevate yourself from just giving information and knowledge to actually making children do things, understand how it needs to be done, then you're elevating yourself to being an Acharya. You go the next level above the Acharya, it is called the Pandita. The Pandita gave insight. Pandita give insight. Insights like, it's a chair, all right, but you need to earn a position to sit on a chair. It's a chair, all right. Can I sit on that chair? No. You need to have a certain ability, a certain contribution to be in the school, to be sitting on that chair. If I'm the chairman of the school, not everybody goes and sits in the chair. How do you become the chairman? There's an insight to it. There's an experience and why you need to be sitting there. There is a maryada of the chair. There's a respect. If I'm sitting on the chair, what does the chair entail? What are the responsibilities? It's not just going there and sitting on it. What's the insight into the whole idea of the chair itself? Right? What's the idea of the apple? How much apple can you eat? What do you do with the apple that's left over? How do you cut it and eat? How do you share it with people? You know, the whole insight into the skill, the knowledge, the information. That's what a Pandita gives. You've got someone called as a little higher level, you've got the Drishta. Drishta gives a foresight. So, if a Pandita gives an insight, a Drishta gives foresight. Looking forward, looking ahead. You know, what would be the kind of role this chair will have to play 10 years down the line? If I'm sitting on the chair of a teacher, the Drishta would talk to you about how your role is going to be 10 years down the line. Right? So, looking into the future, giving a foresight. How do you prepare for the future? Or, for example, if you're sitting in the position of being the chairman of a school, what's the kind of infrastructure that is required, right, for this institution? What kind of teachers would you have in future? So you'll have that foresight. So somebody who thinks of it, who teaches you to think about it, is a Drishta. Somebody who's giving you foresight. And finally, the most elevated level of a teacher is called the Guru. And the Guru gives you wisdom. And it's very difficult to describe that. Right? So think about it. I, as a young educator today, when I look back, so beautiful and so profound. All I have to do is, if you are still an Adhyapak in schools, kids don't want you. Kids don't want Adhyapaks. If you are an Upadhyay giving them knowledge, they might have a certain amount of respect for you because you're giving little more than just information. You know which is the world's biggest Adhyapak today? Google. None of you even come close to Google as an Adhyapak. Right or wrong? So Google is the Adhyapak. Right? So similarly, think about elevating yourself. If you're an Acharya, teach them skills which they will. If you give a person a fish, you feed them for a day. Teach them how to fish. Teach them for a lifetime. So that's what an Acharya does. And what's also important is insight and foresight. And finally, what you can give, which no Google can give, is your wisdom. Stop focusing on the first term, second term, and final term. There's a lot of wisdom that each one of you have got in your own experiences. Start sharing that. So when I was talking about the 7 things that I feel modern teachers need to have, I take my inspiration from the 6 levels of, ancient Indian classification of teachers. In that, the first one that I think that we all can do and need to do is create experiences. At LXL Ideas, we do a lot of research. And a few years ago, when we did a research and we asked students, this was actually a research done by for me and my classmates, because a lot of us are very, very successful. So I just told my team, can you just ask my batch, why are they so successful? It was a very personal research for me and my batchmates. All of us, when we gave feedback, we remember 2 things, the reason what they believe made them successful. One was teachers, and 2, the experiences they got in school. Remember, your role actually is not to teach today, is to create experiences for children, because they're going to remember experiences. They'll remember that annual day, that sports day. They'll remember the time when that dress got lost in a costume day, right? So those are the experiences that they're going to remember. So your role today as a teachers, you need to create experiences and make learning enjoyable. I make films in this project of mine called School Cinema. And whenever I travel, I try and go and ask schools, ma'am, how's the program doing? That's a question I ask. A lot of principals and teachers, they give me a very funny reaction. Sultan, the children love the films. I said, okay, but I don't know what they're learning. Ma'am, but the film was on a topic of religious tolerance. Yeah, correct. They enjoyed the film. Somewhere, as educators, we believe that learning has to be a difficult process. I can tell you as a researcher, as someone who's worked extensively with children, education has to be a fun experience, otherwise it is not education. If children are not enjoying the process, they are not learning anything. It has to be an enjoyable process. So remember, your role, your goal is to create experiences which are fun. So figure that out, how you're going to create those experiences. Can you just walk into a class and say, children, open chapter 3? Or would you want to just create an experience for 5 minutes and then start the class? Just make it fun for them. And they will love it. And they'll love you in the bargain. And hopefully those flowers will come back to your table, which are missing out, right? Here's another very interesting one. What are the skills that you need? If you've got your B.Ed and M.Ed, seriously, you cannot be a teacher. What you need are skills which you don't necessarily get at B.Eds and M.Eds. You need your skill of public speaking. And ma'am and sir, if you're organizing the next training program for your teachers, it has to be on public speaking, on theater. You need to be actors inside a classroom. You need to be storytellers. You need to be counselors. You don't need to learn. So by the way, if I've studied my master's and I'm teaching 7th standard physics, how much more physics are you going to teach me? Because every year someone's coming and teaching me more physics. I don't need that. It is said that if I have to teach Sultan physics, it's not enough to know physics. I need to know Sultan better. I need to know the kid better. So for that, here are the skills which I believe, if I were to run a school, I would make sure that all my teachers are in the path of becoming better public speakers, better theater performers. Teachers should be coming together and putting up theater performances and spending at least 1 hour of doing theater practice in school and in colleges. Storytelling, it's a law. All our education, Gurukul system was storytelling, period. It was only stories which were being told. I don't know how many of you are aware, our Panchatantra, if all our kids understand our Panchatantra, more than enough for building character. You don't need anything more. You just don't need anything more, because such simple, beautiful stories being told with a monkey and the crocodile. Wow, that's enough. And the child likes it. And all ages, even you people would love to listen to a story like that. So can we become storytellers? That's the skill that you need. And it's not difficult. Here's the next one, which I almost touched upon it. Skill to counsel children. Lay counseling takes probably a program of a day to learn to become a lay counselor, because the reason why it's become more relevant today is our children are growing up with very high levels of stress. And a lot of things that are happening today are not in the control of the child. Just the amount of sugars that they eat, they can't sleep in the night. Because they can't sleep in the night, they don't get up in the morning. The amount of exposure that they're getting into, the distance they travel from home to school. I mean, that itself is creating so much of stress in their system. So children are more violent today. Children are more agitated. Children are not focusing. By the way, every child in your class who is not focusing is not an ADHD. Thank God when I grew up, I didn't have any of those mechanisms. Because otherwise my mother would have got a marks card, ADHD, A+. I would have got that. So let's not brand children. Let's try and understand them. Your skill to listen to children. Being a communication teacher, this is something that I've learned. When listening is more important than speaking. And when I'm speaking, how are you listening? Normally we believe we listen with our ears. By the way, we listen more with our eyes. Did you know that? And we listen most from our heart. And with children, they don't speak much. It's your heart that needs to understand. And your ability to be a counselor. A lot of times, if a child is not doing well in math, We do stupid opposite things. This child is bad in math, right? You know what's the first thing we recommend? Tuitions. Excuse me, he doesn't like maths. That's why he's not doing well. So why are you giving him more math? I just don't get the logic. I just can't, and I have a whole world around me which is behaving stupid. Children who are not good in one subject, they are not good not because the subject's bad, it's because they're not enjoying the subject. And what do? We give them more of that subject and we kill that child. So it's about understanding the child. What are the fears? What are the apprehensions? I think teachers need to be counselors, and it makes a huge difference to the way you teach. The other one is, how many of you here, put up your hands please, for the fourth one. How many of you have got a LinkedIn account? Put up your hands. Facebook? How many of you are on Twitter? Okay. And how many of you are on Snapchat? No one? Okay. By the way, your kids, if they are using social media, which one do you think they're using the most? Snapchat. And none of you are on it. How many of you use Instagram? I see a few hands. But remember, they're using Instagram and Snapchat. By the way, Facebook is for old people. That's what the school kids will tell you. And you think you're very cool. Oh, I'm on FB. Okay? But you know what your kid thinks? Ha, oldie. It's an era where things are changing and changing dramatically. So you need to be able to connect with children. And also, simple things like, when was the last time you sent out a circular to the parents in a printed manner? Last month? Yes or no? Yeah. WhatsApp it. It's cheaper, saves Mr. Hegde a lot of money. Right? When you are sending out, especially to a lot of primary school, middle school, why do you send out a homework in the diary? Why would you do that? Just pick up your phone, record on a video and send it, because invariably you know who's going to do the homework. The mother is going to do the homework. Right? So just WhatsApp it. I'm just saying, if you don't have your own school app in which you're connected to all the parents, you can still as a teacher be connected to all your class parents. It's always a good idea. Right? Remember, you cannot fight the whole idea of the digital revolution. If you can't fight it, befriend it and use it. And believe me, there are lots of positives out of it. There are lots of things that children do which you necessarily don't like on the internet, but the idea is not that. Can you then guide them? And that's your role, remember. That's the wisdom that you need to be teaching them. So embracing the whole digital era is something that would be amazing for you guys to do. That's the fourth one. The fifth one, I have 7. The fifth one is research. Schools, education, research, no connection. Think about it. You know, I do a lot of research. My head of research is a doctorate in psychology. You know, we both keep, having a joke over this. Almost anyone in this country who does research did it because they wanted to get PhD. And only 2 people read that research. They, and I'm assuming the guide read it. Nobody else read it. Research was meant to change the world. You know, a lot of times we take pride in saying India is a very developed country and developing country. We're number 1, number 2 in this and that. When you look at the West, the difference in our educational system and theirs is they do a lot of research. Research is not a big thing. Research is asking questions and finding out, are we doing it the right way? Let me give you a quick research now. I'm doing it now with you. How many of you think, put up your hands and show me, how many of you think that children sleep later than what they did 10 years ago? Can I get some water? Put up your hands. I want to see your hands. Okay, most of you. How many of you think that children normally would wake up later than what you and I did and what children did 10 years ago? Normally they would wake up later because they slept late. How many of you think that they eat a lot more sweets and sugars and high energy food than they did 10 years ago? Correct? So what all of this means is that our children are sleeping late. If given a choice, they would wake up late. You know what's happened to the school timings? 10, 15 years ago, the school timings started later than what they do now. Exactly the opposite. So technically for me, most school kids who are in class at 8 o'clock, 8:30 are actually asleep. And here's a funnier one, because without any thinking, we're just doing it. The first subject in the morning in class is the most important one, called mathematics. So all your kids are sleeping, by the way. If you just did a little research, I would probably put mathematics at 11 o'clock. And I would put something really light for the children to just come and get accustomed to the morning and get used to the day, and then move maths to 11 o'clock maybe. You know, these are the realities that are around us, and we need to look at that. And that comes, and that's what I mean by research. Let's take this. So research is not a big deal. And research, you don't need research scholars, and you don't need people who spend their life trying to analyze and collect data. You can do it yourself. For example, all schools have teachers training. Yes or no? Right? Yes or no? Yes. How much of, if there is 10 hours of teachers training, how many hours of support staff training happens in a school? Not required. By the way, statistics tell me that a lot of children spend more time with the school bus driver than the maths teacher. And who are you training? Poor maths teacher, more training. Research is about looking at the world the way it is today and seeing what we are doing. Is it relevant? What's the kind of uniform our children should be wearing? What color should the uniform be? I don't know. Do some research and figure out. Pune is different from Bangalore. Think about it. What should be the color of the walls in the classrooms? Why should it be white, off-white, grey? Or one smoke grey. There's one very popular one with schools. Or blue. Think about it. It is meant to be a school for kids. Okay, here's the statistics that I'll tell you. Why do you think most schools on the planet have had a blue uniform and white? Most schools had blue and white in different formats. Why did they have blue and white? And khaki, of course. Oh, for the longest time, the easiest available and the cheapest available dye was indigo dye. Indigo, cheapest color available. The other colors were only in Rajasthan. Natural dyes. They were not available all over the world, especially in Europe, they were not even available. And that's why we had blue cloth and white cloth. So what do? Mix the two and make a uniform. After 150 years, when you've got all shades, we've not evolved. We've not, by the way, the Britishers did a lot of, I might blame that system, but there was a lot of research or a lot of thought that went into making an educational system. Why are almost all academic periods in schools 35 minutes to 45 minutes? Why? Why do you think academic periods are like that? Attention span of children 150, 200 years must have been that. Do you know what's the attention span of your children today? Yeah, that's the attention span. That's the reason why most popular videos on television, on YouTube and stuff like that are 2 minutes. More than 2 minutes, they can't watch. And by the way, if you thought that the attention span of children is 2-3 minutes, even your attention span is that much only. Am I right or wrong? Attention span, I'm not saying that now you need to make academic periods 3 and 4 minutes, but I'm just saying that, yeah, I'm just going to wind up really quickly. Here's the next one, which was about, research. So the first one I talked about was creating experiences for children, public speaking, storytelling, skills like drama. Third one was about counseling. The fourth one was the digital era and adapting it. Fourth one was research, right? The fifth one was research. The sixth one is very important and normally neglected, and I think it's going to become more and more relevant, is to bring the parents in the fold of education. You can't keep them outside the gate. If you're running a school in future, and if your parents are not included as a part of your curriculum in different formats, if they're not a part of your timetable, if they're not a part of your planning, you will not be able to run a successful school, because the mindset outside of an average parent has changed. So if you think as a teacher, your skill that you require is to handle kids, to know the subject, to teach that well, not enough. You should also know the skill of handling parents. You know what I mean, right? Some of them can be really nasty, and our teachers need to learn how to handle it. I know of a lot of teachers who would give up the profession tomorrow morning simply because of one reason: they don't know how to handle parents. Am I right or wrong? And I think it's really important as teachers today that you start learning the skill of handling. And handling parents is trying to understand them. Remember, the skill of counseling is going to come very handy there. Just try and understand what's their apprehension, what's driving them, why are they behaving the way they are, why are they expecting that from their children. A lot of them are coming from 2 or 3 ground realities. One, when I was growing up, I didn't have that, so I'll give it to my child. Right? Secondly, education got me successful. I'm going to make sure education makes my son more successful. So they have some very strong, simple things that are driving them. Try and understand them. It makes a lot of difference. And the last one, and I just want to end with that 7th point: stand up for what's right. The biggest thing that's changed from the time I studied in school and the way schools are run today is the educators told the world what to do. Today, the world tells the educators what to do. A lot of things that are happening because the parents' demand, the societal demand, the political demand, the governmental demand. It's happening because a lot of people outside are trying to tell us how to run educational institutions. You need to stand up for what is right. One of the biggest things that's changed in the past 60 years after India's independence is the fact that when the Indian independence movement was going on, the teachers were at the forefront of the independence movement. And today, the teachers are right at the back. They are nowhere to be seen. And one of the biggest things that our teachers today need to learn is to stand up for what is right. Stand up for what needs to be done. Issues like religious sensitivity or language sensitivity, issues like respecting women or issues like, respecting traffic rules. These are all things that are happening around us. And it's simply because we've allowed our kids, we as teachers have just allowed it to happen. So with those 7 points, I just want to end. I love telling stories, remember? And I love stories. And one of the persons that has always inspired me and has inspired people for over 2,500 years is Lord Buddha. Whenever you hear about Lord Buddha, you get that picture of calm and serenity and, right, of peace. So it was one day that Lord Buddha was walking through the fields. And as he was walking, he could see these lush, beautiful green fields, paddy fields. Have you seen paddy fields? This is probably the most beautiful thing that you can see. It's a bright, sunny day, lush green fields. And while Lord Buddha is walking, he gets very attracted to those beautiful fields. So he decides to walk through the fields. And as he's walking through the fields, he sees somewhere in the distance, there is a farmer